Greetings and welcome to another edition of The Pedal Shift Project. The Pedal Shift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments on bicycle travel adventures. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride, let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net, and you can email the show at pedalshift@pedalshift.net or text me at 202-930-1109, and check Pedal Shift out on all the socials as well. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 434th edition of the Pedal Shift Project. My name's Tim Mooney. Thanks so much for joining. On this edition, minimal California takeaways, and thank you all for your patience as we had some, technical difficulties. I hope you enjoyed the kind of bonus best of this week, and here we are with the actual episode that we were planning on, and of course we're back on schedule later on this week for 435. In any event, the bike that came up with me is in my garage. Yes, I have a garage, which is wild. It is here safe and sound. And let's talk about the adventure of getting it up here. There's things to talk about. Let's just jump right into it. I don't have a ton of takeaways. It was obviously a quick trip, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a nice round number. 5 takeaways. Number 1, I really like traveling with less. I was, if you go way, way back to the beginning of the show, I was sort of famously, I like to bring everything guy. I think I made fun of the types that were worried about weight. I believe, if memory serves, I would scream the word grams really loudly a lot. And that was then. I think that there is something to be said about doing a trip with the least amount of gear possible. And that's not to say that it is necessarily always going to be as comfortable, but I think that having that as your starting point, boy, it's just nice to have one bag. It was really nice to not be carrying a ton of camping gear and repair kits and all sorts of different things. It was also really nice to have a different kind of setup where I had the bike bag on my handlebars and out of the way and not taking up a full pannier like I so frequently have. And so I'm very attracted to future bike adventures, trying to focus on reducing the amount of stuff. I've been red pilled on this, for lack of a better way of putting it. So yeah, really going with less. I enjoyed the simplicity of it. I enjoyed the lack of a profile, having 2 big panniers on either side, but we're going to get to that in a bit. And I really enjoyed less weight, quite frankly. I've dropped some weight, but also having less weight with me, that made for more fun riding. It felt more nimble. It felt more fun. And yeah, I really like going with less. That was takeaway number 1, and get used to that because I think we're going to have more of that happening. All right, takeaway number 2. As previewed, panniers, I believe, have their place. And here's why. When I had the sudden realization that I had to bring my laptop with me, you're thinking, laptop's not that heavy. It's only a couple of pounds. Yeah, but a couple of pounds, and then the charger, and then once you get to the point where you commit to taking that extra thing, and that extra thing is going effectively on a rack bag, the thing that's tricky about that is you have weight that's honestly distributed a little too high. Yes, it's on the center line, which makes a big difference. But I noticed, despite liking the more minimal setup, I noticed weight was too high in the back. And I hadn't experienced that in a very long time. I think normally when I have a rack bag, I have weight that is actually distributed lower in panniers. And that gets me to the point of panniers have their place. I think even when you are riding light, I think that there's a really good argument for small or slim panniers to get your weight distributed down and on the sides. I'm thinking that I might be in the market for another pair that would be for this more minimal riding. And it may not necessarily be panniers specifically, but something to get weight down. I looked at fork bags, and I'll have to be honest, for a lot of the riding that I do where I like to get on to transit, fork bags are kind of don't really help a lot when you got to hop on a bus. And so many rides I do involve me hopping on a bus from time to time. And I just like the idea of a bag that can come on and off a rear rack really easily. And all roads lead back to panniers. And so I love that they distribute weight better. I dislike with large panniers, like I have a couple of pairs of, that you get that really high profile and you catch wind resistance. And then if you catch headwinds, it doubles it. So I am thinking about the role of panniers and what I'm going to be doing. I had some older ones that were canvas or nylon maybe that were slimmer. And I think that I might look for something along those lines, but potentially waterproof. I am reminded, living in the Northwest again, as I do, hello from the Northwest, that it rains and you got to have waterproof gear. So I think I'm going to be in the market for some new stuff that's a little lower profile. I don't need for it to carry as much stuff because of number one above that I like going with less. So yeah, I love the idea of panniers and I love the idea in a more minimalist setup. So we're finding this middle ground between traditional bike touring and then sort of the modality of bike packing and minimalism and things like that. And so that's where I'm starting to find my path, and we'll certainly be talking more about that. All right, takeaway number 3. Riding in the rain can be fun, but not if you weren't planning for it. I was expecting when this trip was planned, and reminder, this was planned a little bit on the last minute side compared to what I normally do. I was expecting Southern California, San Diego area, to not have rain. It's surely possible to have rain that time of year, obviously, because it happened, but it's unusual. And I went into the whole notion of this that it's not going to rain and my minimalist setup will work really well. Then, of course, as we got closer and saw that there was rain in the forecast, I got really lucky because, as the show noted, my rain gear was predominantly here in Seattle and I was in West Virginia. So I actually got really lucky that I mistakenly left a rain jacket, an older one, but a rain jacket nonetheless. And it saved the ride, quite literally. The rain was no joke. There was not downpours, but it was certainly coming down for fair chunks of it. And it was a lot of just drizzle for the most part. But when you ride in that, it adds up. It's additive. It definitely ends up being something that you have to deal with. And I got pretty wet, and despite the rain gear and everything. But of course, if I hadn't had that jacket, I would have had to call it much earlier. That said, I did end up riding a little bit less than I would have liked, just because it ended up being a little bit more of a slog, and that was probably a mindset situation. Had I been planning for this in a little different way, or I was in a place where the chances of rain were a little bit higher, say further north, I'm sure that my mindset would have been a little bit different, and I certainly wouldn't have spaced on the gear like I did. But at the end of the day, it was kind of fun. It was sort of type 2 fun, really, at the end of the ride when all was said and done. But I really did enjoy it, and I'm really glad that I did what I did because I covered some really great ground. That's a really fun area to ride, particularly in and around San Diego itself. But then once you get on the other side of the UCSD campus, it gets really quiet really quick, and there's some cool beaches and stuff like that. Yeah, that was really fun, made do despite the rain. And that's the fun thing on these bike adventures is that, hey, you know what? You bring your rain gear if you think there might be rain. And if it rains, that's part of the charm of any ride that you do. Hey, riding in the rain, it can be fun. It's better if you're planning for it. That's all I have to say. Okay, so number 4, try the random cantina every time. When I was at the end of my ride and I was hungry, I had very little to eat and I was ready for some tacos. And I tried this one place and it was closed. And I thought, oh, maybe I go to some nameless box chain kind of place that was in Oceanside there. And then I stumbled upon Random Cantina. And I have done this in California on multiple occasions. If you recall back the ride where I was trying to ride all the way back to LAX
and sort of ran out of bike share, there was a random kind of cantina there too. And I really enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed this one. And I think I mentioned this, like the bartender was just very cool. She was very delightful and fun. And it was kind of fun conversation and whatnot. But I also left my credit card there like an idiot, which, by the way, ended up becoming the biggest hassle over time, because then the new credit card that was supposed to be sent to me, it ended up getting delayed and I had to get yet another credit card sent to me. And so I had to keep changing my numbers all of this time. Oh, I think I finally caught up to it. All of my bill pays have finally been caught up to the now current version of my credit card. But that said, despite all of that hassle, it was still an awesome time, and you should try the Random Cantina every time. And I use this also as a point of emphasis. Try to find something that's local. We all like the cheap fast food when we're really trying to like mow down some calories. And sometimes that's the only option that we have. And there's things to be said. You get the free Wi-Fi sometimes, and there's familiarity. I get it. It's fine. When we're doing these things, especially in places we don't get to as often as we'd like, man, there's something to be said about the hyper-local restaurant or cafe or cantina or whatever. And I really encourage you to try those places. They're sometimes family run and they're really local and they're really cool. And you get a connection with a place that you're in a much better way, I think, than if you go to rando chain that is less fun, to be honest. But often necessary. So again, not saying never, just saying if you got a choice, go local, try the Random Cantina. All right. And so our final takeaway here on this rather abbreviated episode, it was a short trip, so we have short takeaways here. Bike bags are great, but they have an expiration date. Okay, so let's talk about what happened at the end. A relatively drama-free, except for maybe the rain, within this adventure, within this ride, until I got to SMA Airport. And wow, that was stressful in two different ways. And we'll get to the takeaway in the second one, but I do want to mention, boy, I had a rough time with the pedals. I need to find a travel version of a pedal wrench, because I have found that my cheap $1 crescent wrench is a little too thick to get into those pedals. The other option is to maybe find better quick release options or something different. These pedals are pretty shot anyways, and frankly, I think my crank arms are too. In fact, I have not been able to get the pedals back on the bike since I got back. So that was kind of stressful. I was able, thankfully, to get them off. Interestingly, when I've been looking at new bike bags, a lot of them say you don't have to take the pedals off, which is really interesting to me because, of course, that widens the profile quite a bit, but also would create some more protection for the drivetrain components. If that actually is true, I may consider that. But I also like the idea of some quick release pedals in my future. So maybe this is a bonus takeaway here about pedals and removal of pedals when you're flying or traveling. I think I need a better system because I have found taking them off or putting them on can sometimes be really stressful for these threaded pedals. And yeah, I'm gonna think on that a little bit more. But let's talk about the bike bag, because that was, after going through the stress of getting the pedals off, which I was able to, I discovered the fact that TSA had broken the zipper more than it was already broken. There was a portion of it where you could tell where it couldn't go any further, kind of like a knotty area in the zipper track, but it was way at the end. And it wasn't a problem. Something happened on that flight down, I think. And there was a point in the track where some of the zipper teeth actually were ripped out. And so what happened is that as I was zipping the zipper, it just came right off. And I thought, oh, no problem. I'll just put it back on where it came off. And I couldn't do it because it was all chewed up and it was just kind of point of no return with it. And that was really stressful because there are two zippers on it. And I was able to utilize that second zipper to sort of get the thing together. But then I found that the zipper was splitting, and it was splitting in a way that I couldn't re-zip it with the one zipper that was on track and working. So that was a problem. And when I went to TSA, I was just they were like, we have to look in the bag. And I was like, yeah, if you do, this won't re-zipper up. And they said, do you want to do something about it? I was like, I can't. I have to get on this flight. I did. And I was like, I guess I'm just going to deal with it. Like, I literally just sort of walked away. And I was sitting there going, I may not see this bike again. I may not see some of the stuff in there again, because it could just open up and flop out and stuff could get lost. And then we did this in real time as I was telling you all this from outside, because I was just sort of freaked out by the whole thing, but kind of made peace with it at the same time. Maybe not made peace is the wrong terminology. I accepted that it was going to be a problem. Then when I was kind of peeking in while I was telling you that, I was watching them use some packing tape, and they packed that freaking little bike back up, just wrapped it around, and it worked, and nothing came out, and it protected the bike the whole rest of the way. And I'm really grateful to TSA for that. This was during the time where I think they were still getting paid at that point. If you followed, of course, what was going on with Homeland Security and Congress and stuff, there was a point in time when TSA wasn't getting paid. And if that was true then, boy, they just stepped up for me. And that was really great. I was grateful for that. I found that there are TSA agents that are really great, and there are TSA agents that are less so. I'm being kind. And these folks were very helpful. They didn't have to do that. Is not their job, but they did the thing. A little bit of packing tape, and boom, it was set. And like I said, it got back to Seattle. And as I was kind of cutting it open and getting it all set, it was a delight to be able to kind of see that the bike was fine and I was going to be able to get it back together again. I was trying to put the pedals on to get back to the pedals in SeaTac at the airport, and I couldn't get them on. I still haven't been able to. I think the threads are messed up either on the crankset side or on the pedals. I just think that they've been chewed up a little bit too much over time with my nonsense getting them on and off and not knowing which direction they go, and just I think I've screwed them up, which honestly is fine. They're the original crank arms on that bike from 2015 or 16. They're maybe 10 years old. The fact they lasted this long is kind of remarkable. That the pedals are consumables at this point for me. I go through probably a set of pedals every 3 years. So these are ready to go. So yeah, I've got some work to do on this bike and some components to replace. So we'll talk more about that. But the bike bag, that's the thing. That's the takeaway here. It has served me really well. I am a big fan of this particular bike bag by Dog's Body. It was really well made and really well done. That said, I am potentially going to get a cheaper bike bag, kind of an Amazon special for my next bike bag. And the reason is that they have an expiration date always. And this one was pretty expensive. And I think that the fail point on these is the zipper. And I think that most of the zippers are going to be the same. The bike bag being kind of heavy duty canvas is not as important as the zipper being good. And so I'm going to do some research. I'm going to figure out the decision on this. But I think that I could probably buy 5 of these cheaper bike bags for the same price as the Dog's Body, and it would last me longer. Now, I don't like getting into disposable culture or anything like that. So this is going to be an experiment to see what is the right choice. But also I've noticed that some of these bike bags are a little roomier. This bike bag was tight at times for this bike. And so I need to make sure that the dimensions are right and get that all set, because my intention is to do some riding this year. Now, am I going to fly a bike? I'm not sure. If I do, it might be the Brompton. But as I've been noodling around with the idea of some summer riding, once things are more settled here, I am probably going to be staying more local. And if I'm staying more local, I might be allowed to do this without a bike bag, depending on the nature of my return trip. So just open questions all over the place. And a lot depends on what I decide I end up doing. Adventures to come, bike bags to be replaced, pedals to be replaced. But the bike is here, and I'm really excited about that. Bonus content. I ended up shipping the e-bike. The e-bike is here as well. All of my stuff made it to my new place in one of those giant pod-like things by U-Haul. They're called U-boxes because I guess Pods is the other company. And I had room. I ended up having room, and I'm excited about that. The whole bike came. I still may consider taking the motor off of this and putting it on a different bike. But that's, I think, a project for maybe next winter. I think I'm going to utilize the e-bike for riding around here, kind of munching up hills and doing some kind of more local riding when I know there's going to be some hills involved. And it is Seattle, folks. There are hills here. There are big hills. There are famous ones like Queen Anne, and there are lesser known ones like Capitol Hill and Beacon Hill. Well, I guess Capitol Hill is pretty well known, but in any event, you got to deal with the hills. And so I think that the e-bike is a way to go. I've seen plenty of people with e-bikes around here. And of course, the line bikes are e-bikes. And I just think having an e-bike here is going to be a really nice thing, especially now that I'm in this in-between state where I am car free until my car gets here. And I want to be transit and bike first and car second, as I was in DC. And that is part of just getting on the bike and seeing how it feels going to different places, going to go visit family, and which is certainly a bikeable distance, but there's hills involved. So it'd be nice to have the e-bike and just make it all the much better. So I'm really excited about doing that. But a buddy of mine, old roommate from Portland, came to visit my new place here, and he lives in a different part of town, and he took a scooter here, like a gas-powered scooter. And I was like, oh, that's pretty fun. But then I was like, I got an e-bike. I can do that kind of stuff too. So if I want to go to his place, I think the e-bike is the way to go for that kind of a thing. So yeah, Seattle, lots to explore. Speaking of, the next several episodes, we are going to have some day trip adventures. I've got a few cool things that I have already done, and I'm intending to do more of these. So this might be part of kind of an ongoing series of Tim/Pedal Shift Explore Seattle by Bike. And we've got some really fun, interesting things that are going to be part of all of this. They'll be self-contained episodes, but they are going to be sort of tour journal style. And some of them are more interesting than others. But again, it's just me getting out there and using a bike and getting out there and enjoying and exploring. And that's sort of what the show is all about. So yeah, we're going to be really Seattle-centric, I think, for the next couple of months, I'm thinking. But as we get to the point where I'm more settled here and I've got the space and the time, I think then we're going to start bringing back the camping and bringing back the more traditional adventures that I've been putting on this show for a long time. And there are so many interesting places that are easily bikeable too, especially if you get a little fast forward with a ferry or a bus. And that's what's really exciting for me. So we got much more of that content coming. That's it for Minimal California and the Takeaways episode. We got the bike here. So excited. I've got N equals 3 right now. I've got the e-bike, I've got the Brompton, and I've got the Safari. And that's going to be really good. The other bike, the beloved Goblin, is going to get donated in the next few weeks. And I might have a few pictures. We might do a little segment on the show to say goodbye to that bike, because at the end of the day, the frame's just too small for me. And it always was. But I have memories on that bike for miles, and it's the right time. It will go to somebody that will enjoy it. It will fit them. It will be great. I will never lose the memories and the trips, but it is time to say goodbye to that bike. But that also means I have room for another one, maybe? Who knows? We'll see.
Thank you for joining. You can find Pedal Shift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedal Shift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.